We have lots to talk about in today's video, including lots of trade talk around the Calgary Flames. They've had a historically bad start, lots of players on the team generating interest from around the NHL. Doesn't mean they're all going to be moved. Some will, maybe some won't, but lots of players on that team getting interest. We'll discuss what moves we may see. Plus, in Vancouver, we saw one trade today picking up a player from Chicago. They could also be looking at options from Boston. Another rumor we'll take a look at from Dave Pagnotta. Plus, could Steven Stamkos part ways with the Predators sometime during the season at the deadline or in sometime in the not too distant future if things don't go well? Some reports believe that it could be a possibility, and of course, we'll take a look at the Maple Leafs and Nick Robertson. Could that Lucas Reichel trade kind of give them a template of what they might be looking at for returns? Plus, we have an update on the All-Star game returning in 2027, update from the NHL waiver wire, lots of injury and roster moves, and I want to discuss as well some of the officiating that took place last night between the Habs and Oilers. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. First up, news from the NHL waiver wire. We had Capitals forward Sheldon Rempel on waivers yesterday. We found out today that he did in fact clear. And because of the fact that he cleared, as I mentioned yesterday, there was some speculation that if he wasn't picked up, that there would be an agreement between he and the Capitals organization to terminate his contract. And that indeed has transpired. So they've mutually agreed to terminate. Sheldon Rempel is looking for more opportunities elsewhere. So he'll now become an unrestricted free agent and he can sign with another NHL team. He can go over to Europe or wherever else he feels is a better fit for him and better opportunity. But Rempel no longer associated as of today after clearing waivers with the Washington Capitals. Now, I do want to touch on, I don't like to talk about the refs a whole lot. I don't want to be one of those people that blames the refs because I know, listen, I've been involved in sports my whole life. I've been an athlete back in my days when I was younger. I've been a parent watching my athlete child play in youth sports for many years now. I get how hard the officiating can be, and I can only imagine what it's like at the pro level. I can only speak to it at the youth levels, amateur levels, etc. Right? And so I don't like to rag on them, but last night's officiating between the Canadiens and the Oilers to me was one of the worst jobs I've ever seen. And I'm not a Habs fan either. So just to make that perfectly clear, I do not cheer for the Montreal Canadiens. I try to be as unbiased as I can on this channel and cover the game from an open mind, open perspective. But yeah, I'm not a Habs fan. Let's just get that out there first and foremost. But I felt horrible for them last night. I just thought they got jobbed by the referees in that Oilers game. I mean, for the most part, it was a back and forth matchup. And I know the Oilers are lethal offensively. Obviously, they were a little leaky last night as well, a high-scoring affair, but those power plays that the Oilers were getting in the third period, I thought were brutal. Like the Slavkovsky penalty, which they called him for boarding, I didn't think was good. Then there was the one on McDavid. I thought that was horrible. And then the unsportsmanlike to Josh Anderson after one of the goals to give them another power play right after. I didn't agree with that either. I mean, I just didn't think there was anything that egregious or obvious. I know we can't always hear what is said all the time, but I don't know. It's just, to me, I've never watched a game that I can recall, at least. I mean, I probably have felt this way a little bit at times, but when you kind of, let your fandom not get in the way or look at things unbiasedly or whatever, sometimes I can understand why fans might feel like the refs are out to get them. I don't typically, though, I don't agree with it. I've even had cases, where I've watched teams that I'm cheering for and they lose, and it's like I just don't like to blame the refs. But in this case, you couldn't help but feel like they really wanted the home team to win, and I never really want to say things like that. I never really felt that way before, but it just sure felt like game management, which we know happens. Absolutely, it happens, but not to that degree. I don't know. I know the Habs were ticked about it. Listening to some of the comments of some of the players after the game, they sure felt like the refereeing wasn't good, and I don't blame them at all for being upset. I thought Montreal deserved to win that game. I don't know. I've even seen a lot of people, regardless of who they cheer for, just really think that the refs were just in one last night and were just kind of making crazy calls with that. I thought that was absolutely horrible. And I really, when you hear Gary Bettman speak and say they have the best officials in the world, that was not an example of it, Gary. And they need to be better. And they should not make anybody feel like it's one-sided, because it really did feel that way at times last night, especially as the game went on. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think. If you're an Oilers fan especially, let me know what you think of some of those calls. Like, at least a couple of those calls shouldn't have been made, I don't think. I'm sure if you're a Montreal fan, you probably feel that way as well. But even if you are a Habs fan and you don't think the referees were doing anything bad, let me know what you think. A bunch of other news updates around the NHL. Let's start with some roster moves, injury updates, that kind of stuff. The Carolina Hurricanes today, they're dealing with some more injuries today. They've recalled Bradley Nadeau. They're going to be without William Carrier and Eric Robertson for a while. Both, according to Rod Brindamore, look like they could miss extended time. And K'Andre Miller also left the last game and could be out a while too. So they've got, I think, now 6 regulars on the injured list. So things are not going well in that sense for Carolina. They keep rolling along though, obviously having a really good start to the season, but it's going to be tough to keep that up if the injuries keep piling up. For sure, that's not good. Of course, last night was the Nordiques versus the Whalers, of course, with both Colorado and Carolina wearing their old retro jerseys, giving homage to the Nordique and Whaler days, where, of course, the franchises used to be located before they ended up where they are today. And I love the jerseys and love the concept, but it did not lead to a very good outcome for Carolina's health, at least. But we'll see what happens from there. Speaking of health, the Red Wings today were finally able to activate young forward Nate Danielson. He was on non-roster injured reserve, and he's been officially sent down to the American Hockey League's Grand Rapids team. He's in their lineup tonight as they have a game. The Avalanche today also recalled Jack Auger and Daniil Gushkin. The Maple Leafs got good news today. Joseph Woll is back. I guess just in the last day or two, we were asking what's going on with him, because reporters were asking Craig Berube, and he really didn't have much of anything to say. And maybe he didn't know yet, obviously. But Joseph Woll is rejoining the Maple Leafs. He will not be able to play for a little while. He is on long-term injured reserve, but he is going to be able to resume skating and starting to practice. So once the criteria is met for him to come off long-term injured reserve, then they can activate him and he can get into game action. It might be, well, it's usually 10 games or in 24 days that they have to miss. So we're pretty much almost at that point. So a couple more games and he can come back. So that's good news for Toronto. I'm not sure how quickly they're going to be comfortable getting him into a game. We'll see how things look in practice and whatnot, but he's missed a fair bit of time here, including time in camp. So he'll need some time to get the rust off and get ready for sure. And in Toronto also tonight, Morgan Riley is out, so he'll join Chris Tanev as a couple of important regular D-men not in the lineup. Doesn't sound like it's anything serious for Riley, but they want to give him a night off to hopefully heal up whatever he's dealing with. It's one of those undisclosed injuries that he can hopefully get through and not have to miss extended time. The Leafs are also scratching Nick Robertson tonight, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and Easton Cowan's in. You have to wonder, Robertson has been playing a decent amount as far as being in the lineup goes so far this year. Hasn't produced a whole lot, though. And now that he's reached healthy scratch territory, is this going to be finally when we see a move? Obviously we had a trade today, or earlier there was a video on the channel, which we might as well just recap here quickly. I was going to mention this in a minute anyway, but Lucas Reichel traded from Chicago to Vancouver, a 2020 first round pick. They get a 4th rounder back. So you got to wonder, is this a scenario where, like a template, if you will? Is the Leafs looking at something similar? I mean, Robertson is, wasn't a first round pick. So I don't know. So usually first round picks tend to get more chances and tend to hold their value a little bit longer. And if that's all Reichel had left, what are they going to get for Robertson? Now, Robertson probably is fair to say has produced a bit more, but it might not be a whole lot better than that. It might not be exactly that either, but whether he's making, getting say a 3rd rounder back maybe or something along those lines, but we'll have to wait and see what the Leafs do. But I think as we've heard from reporters in recent days, we might be getting finally near the point where the Leafs make a move on Nick Robertson, but we'll see. We've been hearing that for so long, it's hard to imagine it's going to finally take place. The Lightning today sent back Scott Sabourin back to the American Hockey League. In case you're wondering why he's been going up and down, essentially, he has an NHL suspension to serve, if you remember from the big altercation with the Florida Panthers near the end of the preseason. So he's been recalled now a few times to serve the 4 games that he was suspended earlier. So that's why he's going up. Then he'll go down, can play in the American Hockey, because he has to play at least 1 game before he can be recalled again. So once they get through his suspension, I suspect he'll probably stay in the AHL a little bit longer until they have a more defined purpose to bring him up. The Islanders had recalled Matthew Highmore. He was now sent back to the AHL. The Sabres today sent prospect defenseman Radim Murka, who was a high mid-first rounder last year in the NHL draft, has been sent back to his junior club with the Seattle Thunderbirds in the Western Hockey League. And the Canucks also now have officially put Teddy Bluger on IR. We know he's been injured for a little bit, but it's now finally official that he's on injured reserve. So like I said, we've had a trade today. We had waivers news. We'll get into some rumors. One more confirmed piece of news before we jump into the rumor mill. The NHL has officially confirmed the return of the All-Star Game in 2027. And of course, we'll go to UBS Arena, home of the New York Islanders, where they were supposed to hold the 2026 All-Star Game, which was confirmed a while back. And then of course with the Olympics, they decided to change the event to a Olympic send-off. It was going to be a different format, and now they've since canceled and scrapped that as well. So there will not be an NHL event at UBS Arena, what would be the beginning of the Olympic break. So the All-Star Game will return in 2027 in the same location. Now, as I mentioned, onto the rumor front. We already touched on Robertson and the Leafs. Getting into the Predators, and we'll get a lot of stuff talking about the Flames and a little bit on the Canucks. Elliotte Friedman on a podcast appearance today was talking about the possibility that Steven Stamkos and the Predators might actually part ways, if things don't get better, so to speak. Of course, we know he had a, complicated exit out of Tampa. I think it was, probably tough for him to deal with after being their longtime captain, leader in many all-time statistical categories, multiple Stanley Cups. Great run in Tampa, first overall pick. He probably never thought he'd ever leave, but he was kind of forced to leave because of the really, poor effort to sign him in free agency. So because of that, he ends up signing I think it was a 3-year deal at $8 million to go to Nashville. Well, year one was not so good. The Predators ended up being a lottery team and absolutely stunk. This year, I think they've shown some signs that they can be better, but how much better are they going to be? It's still early. UC Saros has been really good for them so far, which will go a long way to getting a few more wins. But I think it's fair to say that team definitely has... I'm still not super confident they're going to be a playoff team. And even like I said, even if they're better, but they're not a playoff team, you have to think that Stamkos and even Marchessault and some of these other guys might be thinking geez, this is not why I came here. I didn't come here to be a lottery team. I came here because I couldn't come to a respectable agreement with my old club, and I thought we were going to be in a very competitive situation. Remember last summer, well, not the summer that just passed, but the summer of 2024, the Predators appeared to have won the offseason, which, as we know, sometimes means nothing at all. And this is further proof of that, signing veteran Steven Stamkos, veteran Jonathan Marchessault, both had so much success in their old clubs. And then, of course, Brady Shea in the blue line as well. It was wow, this team is really being aggressive. Barry Trotz is new as a GM. He's really stepping up to bring in some big-time talent. This team, very well might be a threat in the Western Conference now. And then they absolutely stunk. For whatever reason, the mix just wasn't right or what have you. Saros didn't have a good season. That didn't help either. And obviously we're in year 2 of that. And if things don't get better, Friedman really sees a scenario existing where both sides get together and talk about his exit and maybe finding somewhere for him to go to finish out this year perhaps, and maybe the last year in his contract. So yeah, be interesting to see if Steven Stamkos could be a trade deadline acquisition. With the cap rising the way it's been, it'll be a little bit easier for Nashville to move him. And, maybe they do retain a little bit of salary. It's hard to say, but could be an interesting player to watch, someone with all that experience and still able to produce. It can be more of a complimentary piece to teams trying to get over the top. Would be huge. Now, according to some updates from Dave Pagnotta, one we'll touch on the Canucks and we'll get into the Flames stuff. Of course, we saw, like I said, a trade today for Lukas Reichel, a young player looking for a fresh start. We'll see if that works out. We talked yesterday about some of the other options the Canucks are looking at, and Pagnotta kind of reiterated that Pavel Zacha really is a player that the Canucks and Bruins have had talks on a numerous amount of times, dating back to last year, going to the second half of the year towards the trade deadline, then again in the offseason. Of course, they've never come to an agreement. They have not pulled the trigger on a trade. The Canucks obviously have a few decent-looking younger players that might interest the Bruins. I don't know how much of that Vancouver feels the need to trade. At this point, they're kind of desperate for centers. Zach has done pretty well in Boston. Could benefit from going there. But, looking at their team, like Quinn Hughes has had, I think, fair to say, a quieter start to the season. Pettersson has not been himself. Like, I don't know. I feel for the Canucks. I do wonder if it's worth moving on any of these younger prospects, because I'm concerned within the next year plus, do they have to blow it up anyway? It makes you wonder. I don't know. I'm not super high and confident on the Canucks right now. And would Zacha be a potential help and fix right now and make them more competitive? It might be. But is it going to get them to the playoffs? But we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. So hard to say what the direction the Canucks should go in my opinion. But he is a player they're looking at. And if Rutherford and Alvin want to pull the trigger, the asking price is not going to be cheap. The reason Zacha has not been moved by the Bruins is Don Sweeney apparently has set a pretty high asking price, and none of the teams that have shown interest have come close to meeting it yet. So if that changes, maybe we'll see something happen. Now, when it comes to the Flames, Pagnona had multiple updates here. One, he started with talking about Rasmus Andersson. Of course, he's the one player that's the most likely in Calgary to be traded. Now, there is some belief that Andersson and his agent went back to the Flames around the beginning of the season, maybe to take one last stab at trying to stay. I don't think Rasmus has come 100% saying, get me out of here, nothing like that. I think the relationship is still decent, but I think it's fair to say that the Flames have not been anywhere near what he wants on a contract. And I'm not sure that it makes total sense, given the state of that franchise right now, that it makes sense to give, a defenseman who's, yes, he's a good player. He's still young enough that for the right team, it makes sense to sign him for 7 or 8 years. For Calgary, I don't think it does, because I'm not convinced for the first half of that contract, at least, that they're going to be really super good. They're having a historically bad start to the season. Even Dustin Wolf is getting frustrated after signing a long-term deal. He's played relatively well. I mean, he's had a few shaky games, but for the most part, he's been good. And, calling out his team, I don't even know if he meant to do it or not. But basically, when asked post-game the other night, saying that he can't score the goals. His job is just to stop the puck. And the team can't score right now. Big problem. Big problem is they can't seem to put the puck in the net, no matter how well Wolf plays. They can't give him any run support, and it's just been a horrible start for the Flames. Like I said, I honestly think they need to, and I felt this way for a while, that they need to kind of embrace the rebuild and go with it. But it seems like Craig Conroy has been taking the approach of more of trying to slowly retool this roster. They don't want to strip it down to the bare bones here and move out all the vets. And I think a lot of this is around ownership. I don't think ownership wants to accept the word rebuild. They're trying to retool on the fly, trying to find ways to get in some younger players, trying to re-energize the group, hope that some of the veterans that stick around can keep producing. But even some of these guys are struggling now as well. And when it comes to Rasmus Andersson, Pagnota's comments suggest that the Vegas Golden Knights and the Dallas Stars are still his preferred landing spots, preferred destinations. But he says that he wonders if things keep going the way they are and things are pretty tough in Calgary, that Rasmus might broaden his teams that he's willing to go to and help facilitate something sooner than later. Now, he could change his mind on going to a team that he's set to sign with, accept a trade to some other teams that he may not be sure about, or maybe not, even if he doesn't see himself signing there long term, and then hit free agency in the summertime. Now, I don't know how he feels about it. Sometimes guys prefer to be moved and do the extension and just be done. But really, I think he could probably hit a home run in free agency. I don't think there's going to be a lot of, really solid top 4 defensemen around that could be had for the taking. So he could get overpaid. But Anderson still very much on the outs. And basically what Pegman was saying around him is that he wonders, because of the bad start, if he'll broaden his team list that he'll go to try to make something happen sooner than later and move along. Obviously, some talk about Nazem Kadri. Kadri did have a full no-move clause early in that contract, and that has now changed. That's now a modified no-trade clause. I believe it's 13 teams. So that's still a healthy list that the Flames could trade him to without needing his consent. We know there's been a number of teams that have expressed interest in Kadri. There's reportedly a lot of teams watching him, which makes sense. He's got a lot of great experience, a lot of playoff experience. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's a really good, in my opinion, he's a great number 2 center. I don't know that he's a great number 1. I think he's a decent number 1 on a Flames team that has struggled. But if you get him on a stronger team like his role he had when he was with the Avalanche, and he excelled in that role as a really strong team. Now, he got to play with some really solid line mates and had a career season, which has kind of led to his contract that he got now. But at the same time, like that, he hasn't been bad. He's like most Flames, not the most productive to start the season. I think he's got 4 assists, hasn't scored yet, but still, in the right scenario, he's gonna turn things around. So teams are definitely watching Kadri, and with the change in his structure of his trade protection, it might make it easier to make that happen. And another player that, according to Pagnota, a lot of teams have their eye on is Mackenzie Weegar. Now, again, we don't know that the Flames will move Weegar or Kadri. I think a lot of this is going to depend on the players. I think if the players go to Conroy and say, listen, if you need to trade me, I'll work with you, try to get me to a spot I'd be happy with, or, something to those lines, because clearly this team appears to be, like I said, ready to go into a deeper rebuild. I honestly think they should try to get Gavin McKenna or one of those top picks, because I think they need it in the worst way. The Calgary Flames have not had a super high draft pick in a while. If looking at last year was one of their higher picks, they tend to get into the mushy middle a lot. You have to kind of pick a direction. You either should aim to suck real bad or get in the playoffs. That middle part where you're decent and you're close but not quite, man, they get screwed over because of where they're at in the draft. A lot of the impact players aren't available. You get some decent players, but they're not game changers. So that's why you see some teams do go in more into tank mode, because you almost need to get those high picks that are game-changing impact players. And it's not just McKinnon at the top of that draft. There's a few others that could be game changers as well. If you're picking in the top 3 or 4 picks, you have a shot to get a game-changing franchise player. Now, they're all going to end up having different careers, and they may not all pan out the way things people think they will right now. But, either way, Weegar, a right shot defenseman, signed long-term, or was it $6.5 million or something like that he's making? To me, that's very, very attractive. I kind of look to his hometown team of the Ottawa Senators. I wonder. Now, we haven't heard rumors suggesting that they're talking or anything. This is just me thinking out loud. But with Nick Jensen having major hip surgery, and very smart defensive-minded defenseman, had a real good year for Ottawa last year, playing through a hip injury for almost half of it. And he's had the surgery. It's a big surgery. His mobility is not quite there. Still has a lot of the other skills, including the hockey sense and positioning, and knows how to play D and all that, but he's not mobile like he used to be. And I don't see where he's in the last year of his contract. I just don't see a scenario where he's back in Ottawa next year. I don't think it makes sense at all. They've got Artem Zub. They picked up Jordan Spence. But the right side, they have Yakimchuk on the way. But if they can get a veteran player, Uyghur's caliber, to solidify that top 4, then have guys like Spence and Yakimchuk battling for the third pair spot, for the short term, that might be what's best for that team. They really could. Now, they're probably not the only team he'd make sense for. But I know before he signed long-term in Calgary, there was speculation that they were looking at him then. I don't know how accurate that was, but there was some talks. That was before Jensen ended up in Ottawa too. But if Uyghur doesn't go anywhere and we get into next offseason and Jensen's officially gone from the Sens, I could see a scenario where that makes even more sense for them. But again, they're not the only team out there. That's just one of the top ones that come to mind because of the hometown connection and their actual need on the blue line. So we'll see what happens, but we could be seeing potential big moves out of the Flames as they hopefully soon might accept their fate and just kind of go a little deeper into this rebuild. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll talk about it further. Of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.